everyone. Today I want to talk about what might be going on if you've started a ketogenic diet or you're intermittent fasting or both and you're not feeling well. And I also want to talk about two conditions that are difficult to do keto and intermittent fasting for, and you definitely need a doctor's supervision for these two conditions. So first of all, I just want to remind you that your body has the option for two fuel sources. Most people eating the standard American diet, which is a high-carb diet, are using glucose for their fuel source. Now, this runs out quickly because your body can only contain about 1,700 calories of that. So it runs out, has to be replenished, and when it's running out, you start to feel pretty lousy. Whereas your body can also use the fat that's on your body for its fuel source and burn it off. Or it can use the fat that's in your diet as its fuel source. And this fuel source is way more plentiful. I've said this in other videos, so we have a lot of supply on our bodies, and it's easy to get quickly in the diet as well. Now, there's a big transition period. When you go from using sugar or from carbohydrates, using glucose as your fuel source to fat, there's a big transition that has to take place in your body. You're actually setting up new machinery to do that. There's a lot of required enzymes to do this, to convert this fat into ketones to be used in the body, and it takes a while to set that up. So for some people, it could be 2 weeks to be fat adapted. For other people, it could be 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes even more. It depends on a number of things. So let's talk about that for a second. Why would it take one person 2 weeks? And actually, some people can start out and within 2 or 3 days, they're feeling great, and then other people, not so much. It can take weeks and weeks. And why would that be? So I just want to mention that it really goes back to your current state of health. It depends on your diagnosed conditions. It depends on conditions you might have that are undiagnosed. It depends on your state of homeostasis and how far away you are from homeostasis. In other words, how far away are you from hormonal balance and energy balance and electrolyte balance. So there's a lot of things that factor into getting the body in a state of homeostasis. So it matters how far away you are from that. It also matters how many medications you're on and what types of medications you're on. So, and the other thing that really figures into it is how many surgeries you've had. If you've had a recent surgery or a major stress event, these things are going to weigh in to the transition time period of being a carbohydrate or a sugar burner to being a fat burner. So that's really what's at stake there, and this is really important. And as you're doing keto, the other thing that's going to come into play is, are you getting your carbohydrates low enough to see the metabolic change? So I was paleo for a while, and that was not low enough. Paleo is lower in carbohydrates than the standard American diet, and it's certainly a lot healthier choices. But it was not low enough for me to see the changes that I've seen. So when I did keto and intermittent fasting, boom, I saw changes within 6 months, and it was a huge transformation for me. So now I can kind of vacillate between keto and low carb, and I'm very happy in that space. And I also use carnivore too. I like how I feel on carnivore as well. So I use that as a tool. So that carbohydrate level is going to really matter. And you could start at a higher end and just keep notching it down until you start to see the metabolic change. When you start to see stuff happening, you've gotten under the wire for yourself. Or you could just go keto, which is 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. And there's a very good chance you're going to definitely see change there. So it would quicken the whole process, honestly, if you did that. And then the intermittent fasting too, because both of these things, keto is going to keep insulin in check, right? Because it's the carbohydrates that really spike the insulin. And when you're fasting, of course, you're not pulsing insulin either. So both of those things are lowering that insulin, and that's what's going to help you to get into fat burning. So both are important and useful. So now, once the transformation is complete, you're considered fat adapted. Your body is now used to using the fat that's on your body and the fat that you consume as its energy source. And it feels amazing. It's a whole new energy level. And it's just a super, super feeling to be a fat burner. How will you know when you get there? Well, there's a number of things that will happen. You're not going to be hungry all the time. The hunger is going to go away, and it will only resurface when you really do need food, right? The other thing that's going to happen is that you're not going to feel fatigue. You're not going to feel weakness. You're not going to have headaches and cravings. You're not going to have cravings either. So these things are going to go away, and that's how you know. So if you're lowering carbohydrates, and you're trying to get fat adapted, you should start to see these things go away. And when these things go away, you know you're at a good spot. Now, there are some things that help people through this transition period, and those are watching the water and salt balance that I mentioned in the last video, the Himalayan sea salt, Celtic sea salt, Redmond real salt. These things can really help with feeling weak, and headaches. They can really help with that. So these two items. Then also some people develop cramps. You're not going to be retaining all this water because carbohydrates make you retain water, right? So when it comes to magnesium and potassium and other electrolytes, trace minerals, you're going to have a little bit more trouble keeping those in your system. And so an electrolyte powder can really help you through. And I'm going to leave 2 links for 2 different ones in the notes of this video for you to try. And then B vitamins. B vitamins are what's really helpful in setting up that machinery for the enzymes to burn the fat. So B vitamins give me a lot of energy, and they really affect my mood. It really just causes a whole lift in my feeling when I take B vitamins. Now, some people take supplements, but what I recommend is nutritional yeast. It's a food. And when you eat it, when I have it, the feeling is immediate. So I highly recommend nutritional yeast for this purpose. And then MCT oil in the beginning, when you're struggling to produce those ketones, your body is setting up shop for this process. The exogenous ketones through MCT oil are really going to help your brain to feel better, give you some energy. I have to say I've stopped taking it, and then I'll start taking it again because I just feel better on MCT oil. It makes my brain feel better. I use it in my coffee in the morning, and I use it in salad dressings because you can mix it with a really good, awesome olive oil or avocado oil, and it won't harden in the refrigerator. You can shake it up and it'll still come out really easily. You don't have to deal with that. So that part's really nice as well. So this is kind of the starter stuff that I recommend when you're making the transition. And how long you need each one, it really just depends on your symptoms. So I'll put these items in the notes below, and I'll put the symptoms that kind of go with those items so you can kind of see what you might need out of this. I highly recommend, if you are starting from a place that you know you're probably far away from having homeostasis, or you know that you're insulin resistant. One way to know that is if you have extra weight. If you have tummy weight, you definitely have insulin resistance. So, these things can really, really help you in the beginning. Lastly, I just want to talk about the fasting part and how fasting really can boost the whole process of getting into that fat burning state as well. So, and for me, I don't like to feel like I'm missing meals. I've gotten really good at not eating between meals, which is really important, but I like to feel like I'm having a meal. 3 meals a day, even if it's a drink. So my first meal is late morning, and it's a coffee that has MCT oil, cream, collagen powder, gelatin. I'm 53 years old, so these supplemental items I feel I really need right now. So that's like my first meal. Then my second meal, which in the beginning I had around noon and probably works for a ton of people, is my lunch. which is actually typically breakfast foods, because eggs, really good pasture-raised eggs, are so good for you. And so I really like to use those in my diet. There's so much nutrition in those. So that first meal for me is typically my breakfast, or the rest of my breakfast, I guess you could say. And then I'll have dinner with my family. And that's how I look at it. So now that first meal that was at noon is closer to 2. You know, with being in menopause, I am sort of shrinking my eating window to 4 hours, you know, somewhere in that vicinity right now. And that seems to be working really, really well for me, you know, and I don't have any snacks. Now, I wanted to mention, lastly, 2 conditions for which I want to just tell you that you really need help. You need to see a doctor before you even attempt keto or intermittent fasting. And that is if you have cirrhosis of the liver. If your liver is in really, really bad shape, okay, you need to work with a doctor and get with a keto doctor, a doctor who understands blood work when you're on keto and intermittent fasting, because it's different, okay? And if you go on dietdoctor.com, you can search. They have a search engine there, and you can search out doctors in your neck of the woods and start there. And also, if you do a little searching around, you'll be surprised. I've seen even signs in windows that of different doctors working with the ketogenic way of eating, and you know, just advertising that they can help you with that. So you might be surprised on what you can find. The other condition is advanced kidney disease. So these 2 things, and these are the only 2 things that I've really heard of. A lot of people seem to think that if you've had your gallbladder out, you can't do keto, but that's definitely not true. So you might need bile salts, you might need HCl, hydrochloric acid, but you can definitely still do keto and intermittent fasting. With kidney stones and advanced kidney issues, you really have to be careful, and you need to work with a doctor. Lemon water and extra water can be really helpful in terms of the kidneys, though, if you have something mild going on. So keto and fasting can help with just about every organ in the body and function and system. You know, it's just amazing what keto can do, but I just did want to mention those 2 cautionary things. So thanks so much for visiting today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!